There is a part of you that you've been trying to hide your entire life, but it's exactly that part that holds the path you've been searching for. And if you keep running from it, you may spend your whole life feeling like something is missing, even when it looks like you have everything. Today, you're going to discover why the side of yourself you fear the most is the very one capable of revealing your true purpose. There are people who go through life feeling a strange emptiness, as if they were living correctly, yet not fully alive. They achieve things, meet expectations, do everything they're supposed to do, yet deep down, they know a piece of themselves is calling for attention, a quiet restlessness, a sense that a deeper version of themselves is trapped behind layers of persona. And this pain, rarely admitted, is the first sign that the soul is asking to be awakened. If you feel like you've tried everything and still haven't found your place in the world, it's not because you lack ability, it's because you were taught to look outside, when the journey should have begun inside. And according to Carl Jung, it is precisely in the part of yourself you avoid, your shadow, that the key to your purpose resides. What you fear most may be exactly what defines who you truly are. In this video, you will understand why your dark side is not an enemy, but a map. Why your fears reveal your tasks, why your wounds show your path, and why your unconscious knows more about you than your conscious mind ever did. Within the first few seconds, you already feel the value of this journey. What feels dark inside you may be precisely what transforms everything on the outside. Before we continue, there's one essential truth you need to hear. Nothing you've lived so far has been meaningless. Nothing. Every fall, every shame, every impulse you tried to hide, all of it is part of the construction of your true purpose. Today, you will understand why. Today, you will learn how to see your shadow and use it as the force that finally puts you on the path that has always been yours. Life doesn't gain meaning through fame or achievements, but through the person someone chooses to become. Jung reminded us that purpose is identity in motion, not medals gathered. And it's interesting how many people spend years chasing accomplishments, believing they define who they are, when in reality, purpose grows in the quiet corners of self-observation. When someone finally understands that purpose is shaped by who they become, their search becomes less anxious and more intentional. Life becomes lighter, not because it becomes easier, but because it becomes coherent. And in that coherence, the shadow starts whispering questions that can no longer be ignored. Sometimes, when someone looks at a successful person, they imagine there must be a secret formula behind their achievements. But if they observed more closely, they would see that the root of it all wasn't fame, but authenticity. It's like watching a movie and realizing the protagonist only grows when they confront their own limits, not when they receive applause. In this process, the shadow works like a silent reminder that existence is far deeper than appearances. Purpose blooms when someone stops running from themselves and begins honoring every part of their unconscious. And once that journey starts, something within them awakens, a courage that had always been there, patiently waiting. For many people, it's uncomfortable to realize that the life they have today is the result of the person they chose to be yesterday. Yet this realization brings tremendous freedom. If they built who they were, they can build who they will become. It's like learning to drive after years of sitting in the passenger seat. Suddenly they realize that while the road is uncertain, they now hold the wheel. And this is when Jung's teachings return to mind, reminding them that the persona, the social mask, cannot be the final destination. A life shaped by appearance suffocates. A life shaped by authenticity liberates. And when they begin walking at this new rhythm, they are naturally pulled into deeper layers of their shadow. Purpose also reveals itself when someone understands that transformation doesn't need to be epic to be true. Sometimes it begins with small movements, saying no where they have always said yes, acknowledging a mistake without self-punishment, admitting a fear without shame. These small gestures create cracks in the old identity, allowing space for the new one. Jung believed every person carries a dormant potential, waiting for the moment they choose to be who they truly are, not who they pretend to be. And this choice happens in the present, through action, not theory. And as this new posture grows, something deeper emerges from the unconscious. It is impossible to talk about purpose without talking about someone's relationship with their inner world. When someone is disconnected from their essence, everything around them loses color. But when they return to themselves, everything gains meaning again. It's like wiping fog from a window. The landscape was always there, it was just blurred. And when they begin becoming who they were meant to be, even fear takes on a new meaning. Fear stops being an enemy and becomes a sign of growth. And it's in this clarity that the shadow reveals the next step, the hidden path many avoid, but only a few dare to walk. There comes a moment when someone realizes that what they fear most inside themselves is exactly what they most need to see. The shadow frightens because it reveals parts that were pushed into the unconscious, desires, impulses, vulnerabilities, memories the persona tried to hide to survive socially. But Jung always said that nothing grows in constant light. Some things need darkness to be formed. The shadow doesn't arrive to punish, it arrives to teach. And strangely enough, when someone finally chooses to face it, they discover a strength they never imagined they had. It's like opening a door that stayed locked for years, only to realize the monster behind it was just an abandoned version of themselves. Many people try to ignore their shadow, thinking it will disappear. But repressed feelings don't die. They become silent noises that influence behavior without the person noticing. It's like an emotional pressure cooker. The more someone pushes things down, the more likely they are to explode at the wrong moment. Fear, anger, envy. None of these disappear just because they were hidden. In fact, these buried emotions reveal where purpose is trying to emerge, because they show what still needs transformation. And when someone understands this, they begin to notice how their own impulses can guide them toward authenticity that once felt unreachable. The shadow also manifests through repetitive patterns. Those moments when someone reacts the same way again and again, even knowing they shouldn't, like someone who always avoids difficult conversations, or explodes when contradicted, or feels an emptiness when praised. These patterns aren't accidental. They're messages from the unconscious saying, "Look at me." Jung explained that every pattern is a hidden map, pointing to a forgotten part of the soul. So facing these cycles isn't weakness, it's emotional maturity. And those who dare to do it discover that transformation begins far from appearances. Of course, looking at the shadow brings discomfort. It feels like opening a drawer full of memories and emotions someone swore they had outgrown. But this discomfort is the doorway. At first it may feel heavy, like cleaning out an attic full of dusty boxes, everything forgotten, old, piled up. Yet as each box opens, important fragments of personal history emerge. Fragments that explain wounds, strengths, fears, and desires. And as this process unfolds, a new relationship with oneself begins, more sincere than the persona ever allowed. The shadow doesn't demand perfection. It demands truth. It asks someone to stop fighting their own nature and begin understanding it. What is hidden isn't the end, it's the beginning. That's where purpose forms silently, waiting for someone to have the courage to listen. And when they understand that the shadow is not an enemy, but a hidden path to self-knowledge, a new awareness appears. Exactly about the masks they wear every day without realizing it, and how heavy those masks have become. Most people spend years believing that the persona they show to the world is their true identity. but that social mask, shaped to please, to avoid conflict, to appear strong, is only an edited version of the self. Jung said the persona is useful, of course. No one lives without it. But when it becomes the one in control, something inside begins to fade. A strange exhaustion appears, as if the person were acting all the time. And that's when the unconscious starts sending signals: irritation without reason, a quiet emptiness, the fear of disappointing others. All of these are signs that life is asking them to return to themselves. It's like wearing shoes that are one size too small. At first it seems tolerable, but slowly it starts hurting until walking becomes unbearable. That's how the persona works. It fits specific situations, but suffocates when worn as a permanent identity. Many people live trying to match what others expect: the perfect son, the flawless professional, the always available friend, while hiding their own shadow in a dark corner. But this constant effort to look strong doesn't create purpose. It creates exhaustion. And the more someone tries to sustain an image, the further they drift from their own authenticity. The persona also acts as emotional protection. It avoids rejection, avoids criticism, avoids conflict, but also avoids growth. It's like building a house with glass walls. Everything looks beautiful, but any impact can shatter everything. A person lives afraid of being found out, afraid of seeming weak, of making mistakes, of showing what they truly feel. Yet this filtered version doesn't fool the soul, and the unconscious charges a high price when someone abandons their truth. Anxiety, insecurity, lack of purpose. Life loses color because authenticity was locked behind the persona. But when someone begins to see the difference between who they show and who they are, something powerful happens. They start noticing small inconsistencies, laughing when they want to cry, agreeing when they want to disagree, staying silent when they want to speak. And they realize these tiny betrayals drain their inner strength. It's as if the body and soul were no longer aligned, walking out of sync. And in this misalignment, the shadow calls, reminding them that living to please others costs far more than confronting their own fear. Transformation begins here. In the moment, they choose truth over approval. When the persona falls, the inner world finally breathes. It doesn't mean abandoning kindness or becoming impulsive. It means aligning action with essence, speaking with truth, acting with truth, choosing with truth. And from that alignment, real purpose emerges, one that doesn't depend on applause or external validation. And as soon as this clarity appears, the next step becomes inevitable. The person begins to turn inward, not outward, because it is in this inner dive that purpose starts to pulse and the shadow reveals the next layers of the journey. There comes a moment when a person finally understands that no answer from the outside world will ever be enough. And it's in that moment that the courage to look inward is born, a movement that may seem simple but transforms everything. Jung said that those who look inside awaken because the unconscious holds everything repressed, forgotten, silenced. But looking inward demands honesty, vulnerability, and a willingness to greet the shadow. It's a dive without guarantees, but one that changes the entire landscape of life. And this dive prepares the soul for the next transformation. For years, many people try to fill their inner voids with external noise, work, distractions, endless responsibilities, the search for approval. But no amount of movement quiets what the unconscious insists on showing. When someone finally allows themselves a moment of stillness, emotions long buried rise to the surface. Sadness that was ignored, anger that was silenced, desires that were never expressed. And instead of destroying, this encounter clarifies. It's like finding a box in the attic containing everything needed to understand themselves again. Looking inward requires removing layers that were built throughout a lifetime, expectations from family, pressure from society, outdated beliefs that once served a purpose but now limit growth. It feels like peeling an onion. Layer after layer, the person gets closer to who they really are. And in this intimacy, they discover that many choices were made out of fear, not desire. Many paths were followed to avoid judgment, not to honor authenticity. This realization stings, but it liberates, because someone cannot choose their purpose while living a story that isn't theirs. The inward journey transforms the relationship someone has with their emotions. They stop treating fear, anger, or insecurity as enemies and begin seeing them as guides. The unconscious speaks through sensations, impulses, dreams, discomforts. When someone pays attention, they begin separating what belongs to their essence from what belongs to their conditioning. And this clarity restores power. It's as if the inner world, once chaotic, begins organizing itself. And with each insight, purpose pulses louder, waiting to be acted upon. As someone strengthens this habit of inward observation, they begin noticing subtle changes. They react less impulsively, understand themselves more quickly, recognize their emotional patterns. They stop being afraid of silence. They stop being afraid of truth. And this new intimacy with themselves turns into the foundation for the next stage of the journey. The recognition that what irritates them in others often reveals what remains hidden within. It's almost ironic how the things someone criticizes most intensely in others are often exactly what they fear, seeing in themselves. Jung called this projection, a psychological mechanism through which the unconscious tries to reveal what the conscious mind refuses to acknowledge. It's as if the shadow held up a mirror disguised as another person. And the more someone reacts, the clearer the message becomes. Strong irritation isn't random. It's a sign. Disproportionate judgment isn't coincidence. It's a doorway. And when someone finally understands this, their inner world begins to open. Projection shows up in everyday situations. The person who condemns selfishness but secretly wishes they had the courage to prioritize themselves. The one who criticizes impatience but feels a constant internal rush they won't admit. The one who mocks vulnerability but longs to express their own feelings without fear. None of these reactions expose flaws. They expose needs. They expose parts of the shadow asking to be reintegrated. And when someone sees this clearly, life stops feeling like opposition and begins feeling like information. Of course, accepting this truth wounds the ego. The persona doesn't like the idea that what annoys them outside is actually inside. It feels like betrayal of the image they've worked so hard to uphold. But this discomfort is the starting point of real transformation. When someone says, "This bothers me because it also lives in me," their unconscious begins to relax. The war with themselves weakens, and slowly, reactions turn into reflections. The person stops blaming others and starts asking the question that changes everything. Why does this affect me so much? Projection does not only reveal wounds, it reveals potential. Sometimes someone feels envy, not because they want someone else to fail, but because they see a version of themselves they abandoned. When someone is irritated by another person's courage, creativity, or discipline, it may be a sign that these same qualities are trying to wake up inside them. The shadow holds not only repressed pain, but repressed greatness. And when this is understood, jealousy becomes motivation, irritation becomes inspiration, discomfort becomes a map. Learning to recognize projection is like learning the secret language of the unconscious. At every emotional reaction, someone can ask, "What is this trying to show me about myself?" And this single question opens doors that remained closed for decades. Suddenly, the person stops being a victim of their emotions and becomes a detective of their own inner reality. And this growing awareness naturally leads to the next realization. If the shadow reveals so much through discomfort, then its integration is the next necessary step toward becoming whole. Integrating the shadow is like inviting every part of yourself to sit at the same table, including the parts you avoided your whole life. Jung said that no one becomes enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. Integration doesn't mean eliminating what is dark, but understanding it, giving it a place, and turning it into strength. When someone finally stops running from their shadow, something extraordinary happens. The internal chaos begins to quiet. And from that quiet, a more authentic self starts to rise. Many people imagine the shadow holds only anger, envy, or pain. But it also holds courage, creativity, vitality, intuition, qualities buried beneath years of trying to appear good. It's like discovering an old chest in the basement filled with tools you forgot you owned. When someone opens that chest, they realize how much emotional power they had been neglecting. That anger could help them set boundaries. That envy could reveal their desires. That fear could point them toward growth. Integration transforms forgotten fragments into usable strength. To integrate the shadow, someone must learn to listen without judgment. Instead of saying, "I shouldn't feel this," they ask, "Why is this here?" Instead of suppressing discomfort, they explore it. This shift turns destructive impulses into messages. The person learns when anger protects and when it harms, when fear warns and when it blocks, when desire expands and when it blinds. It's like adjusting the focus on a camera. Everything becomes sharper, clearer, more honest. And in that clarity, purpose begins to reveal itself with surprising depth. Integration is not a one-time achievement. It's an ongoing relationship. Some days the person feels whole, aligned, deeply connected. Other days they feel like they're starting over, and that's normal. The shadow doesn't disappear, it evolves. It continues revealing what needs care, what needs courage, what needs attention. It asks the person to stay awake, to stay aware, to stay honest. And each time they choose this path, they strengthen the foundation of authenticity. They become more themselves, less persona, more essence. And as this inner alignment grows, something becomes unmistakably clear. Thinking is no longer enough. Understanding without action becomes a new form of avoidance. Integration naturally pulls someone toward movement, toward choices, attitudes, boundaries, and expressions that reflect who they truly are. And it is at this exact point that the next truth of the journey emerges. A meaningful life cannot be built through thought alone. It requires action. Many people believe they will find meaning by thinking, analyzing, and planning their lives with perfection. But Jung reminded us, you are what you do, not what you say you will do. Reflection without action is a refined form of escape. It gives the sensation of movement without any real transformation. It's like standing at the edge of the ocean, imagining how the water feels, but never stepping in. And the unconscious knows this. It begins to create discomfort, restlessness, or even anxiety as a way of saying, move. Life only answers to those who act. Real change happens when someone decides to take steps, even small, trembling ones. A person becomes a writer by writing, not by dreaming of it. They become confident by acting despite insecurity. They become disciplined by doing what needs to be done, not by waiting for motivation. Action has a magical effect on the unconscious. It reorganizes the internal landscape. A single courageous act opens paths that endless thinking never could. And as someone starts acting more and imagining less, purpose begins shaping itself in front of them. Overthinking often disguises itself as preparation, but deep down, it's fear wearing a sophisticated mask. The person tells themselves they are not ready, not good enough, or still thinking, but the shadow knows the truth. They are afraid of taking responsibility for their own evolution. In that hesitation, life becomes reactive. Instead of initiating movement, the person waits for circumstances to decide for them. But the moment they choose action, even imperfect action, something shifts inside. An inner engine turns on, and the soul finally feels heard. The beauty of action is that it reveals identity. While thinking, someone imagines who they might be. Through action, they discover who they truly are. A person who acts consistently begins seeing themselves differently. They stop waiting for external permission. They stop negotiating with fear. They start building a life that reflects their values instead of their insecurities. Each decision creates clarity. Each step dissolves confusion. And in that clarity, purpose becomes impossible to ignore. It starts guiding choices naturally, almost effortlessly. Once someone understands that movement creates meaning, they let go of the fantasy of a perfect plan. They embrace the reality that purpose is built step by step, choice by choice, moment by moment. They realize that action does not silence fear, but it puts fear in its place. They begin to walk with fear, not away from it. And as this new posture settles in, a deeper truth emerges from within. The next step of their purpose will be revealed precisely where their fear is pointing. Parte 8, tópico 8 completo, 5 parágrafos, sem títulos, sem separadores. It's fascinating how fear appears exactly in the places where someone most needs to grow. Jung said that where your fear is, there lies your task. And once someone understands this, fear stops being a warning to run and becomes a compass pointing toward evolution. If someone fears expressing their feelings, this usually means their voice is essential to their authenticity. If they fear disappointing others, it means they've lived too long through their persona. Fear, in this sense, is not a blockade. It's a sign that purpose is waiting behind the very door they avoid opening. Fear also uncovers hidden strengths. Many times, someone is afraid of what deep down they know could change everything in their life. Fear of starting, fear of responsibility, fear of success, fear of being seen. Yet behind each fear is a potential waiting to be activated. It's like standing in front of a door imagining monsters behind it, only to open it and find a new path filled with possibilities. The unconscious knows long before consciousness does, and uses fear as a way of saying, "Pay attention, this is important." Understanding fear changes everything. Someone begins to see that courage is not the absence of fear, but the decision to move despite it. Fear exaggerates, it magnifies shadows, it paints catastrophic scenarios that almost never happen. The mind imagines ridicule, failure, and rejection, but when the person acts, reality reveals itself to be far less threatening. The shadows shrink, the monster becomes manageable, and the person discovers a surprising truth. Most of what they feared was nothing more than projection from their own unconscious. One powerful practice is to ask, what exactly am I afraid of? And then, what would happen if I moved anyway? Naming fear weakens it. Acting transforms it. It's like turning off a light that was casting a giant shadow on the wall. What felt terrifying becomes just an object, harmless and small. Fear loses half its strength when someone observes it, and the other half when they walk toward it. And each time someone does this, their authenticity expands. They stop hiding from themselves. They begin choosing themselves. When a person starts moving toward their fear rather than away from it, the journey deepens. One fear faced reveals another, not as punishment but as guidance. Each fear becomes a doorway. Each doorway leads to a new part of purpose. And eventually, they realize something profound. Fear wasn't there to stop them. It was there to show them where to go next. And right after this realization, life presents them with the next teacher, one most people try to avoid: pain and failure, the disguised masters of transformation. There are pains in life that people try to avoid at any cost, believing that if they stay far enough from them, nothing bad will happen. But Jung reminded us that no light exists without shadow, and no transformation happens without some encounter with darkness. Pain reveals where healing is needed. Failure reveals where the soul still trembles. And strangely enough, it's in these difficult moments that the deepest wisdoms emerge. Each fall cracks an old shell, allowing a more authentic version of the person to come through. Pain is not a punishment. It's a guide, a mentor disguised as discomfort. Failure has a very particular gift. It destroys illusions. It shows that the persona cannot sustain everything, that control is an illusion, and that vulnerability is unavoidable. And it's precisely when something goes wrong that someone learns their most essential qualities: resilience, humility, clarity. It's like a sculptor striking stone. Every blow that seems destructive is actually revealing form. The unconscious behaves the same way, using ruptures to reveal identity. Once someone understands this, their relationship with failure changes. It becomes information, not shame. Often, pain exposes what was misaligned. The end of a relationship reveals patterns that were hidden. Losing a job reveals talents that were ignored. Rejection reveals insecurities that were disguised. It's as if every painful moment were a flashlight pointed directly at the parts of the shadow that needed attention. And when someone stops seeing these experiences as personal tragedies and begins seeing them as portals, a new relationship with life begins to unfold. What once felt like loss becomes direction. Pain also teaches someone about their own strength. It's in exhaustion that they learn how resilient they are. It's in confusion that clarity begins to form. It's in loss that love reveals its true depth. None of these realizations come from comfort. It's like a seed buried in the soil, seemingly confined in darkness, yet silently preparing for growth. Transformation begins this way, quietly, deeply, and often in places where the person least expected anything good to emerge. Pain becomes the sculptor, and the person becomes their own masterpiece. Over time, every wound survived becomes a form of wisdom, one that cannot be learned from books, only from experience. It builds authenticity, it strengthens action, it purifies purpose. And as this wisdom grows, the person sees something they couldn't see before. There is no perfect destiny waiting for them, but a life built moment by moment through the way they choose to respond to everything they live. And it is exactly at this point, when they accept the depth of their own humanity, that they finally take the next step, embracing their real self as the source of all meaning. There comes a moment when someone realizes they're tired of performing, tired of playing roles, managing impressions, hiding flaws, and pretending to be stronger than they feel. And in that moment, something profound awakens, the desire to simply be real, to exist without filters. Jung said that purpose is not found in a distant destination, but in the courage to be whole. And when someone chooses authenticity, life gains texture, color, and depth. Even silence feels lighter. The shadow no longer threatens, it collaborates, and transformation at last becomes real. Being real doesn't mean being perfect. It means being honest. It means acknowledging needs, limits, fears, desires, strengths, and wounds. And suddenly, everything that once felt like a weakness becomes a starting point. It's like dropping a heavy backpack after carrying what wasn't theirs for years. Authenticity brings breath back into the soul. And when someone begins to breathe again, paths they never saw before start appearing. Paths the unconscious had been trying to reveal, but the persona had always blocked. Life becomes meaningful when action is aligned within a truth, a boundary set, a vulnerable conversation, a decision made from the heart instead of fear. These simple acts carry immense emotional weight. They stitch purpose into every moment of life like golden thread through fabric. Someone stops moving to be accepted. They move to be aligned. And as alignment grows, life makes sense in a way it never did before. They feel themselves returning home, to a place inside them that had been waiting all along. Those who dare to be real discover something powerful. Vulnerability doesn't weaken, it humanizes. They learn they can make mistakes, start over, say, "I don't know," ask for help, change their mind. And it is in this honesty that purpose grows. Purpose isn't about becoming extraordinary, it's about becoming coherent. It's about living a life that feels true, even if no one else understands it. The shadow helps, fear helps, pain helps. Every part joins together. And when someone accepts all of themselves, the journey stops being about applause and becomes about truth. And when a person finally becomes whole, shadow and light, courage and fear, strength and fragility, they discover a meaning that no one can take from them. A sense of being exactly where they should be. A connection with their own soul, a quiet clarity that expands with each step. Life doesn't suddenly become meaningful. It becomes meaningful every day they choose to be real. And this daily choice creates space for everything that matters. The truth that purpose isn't given, it's revealed from within. You've come this far because deep down, you know you don't want to keep living on autopilot. And now that you understand the power of your shadow, there's no returning to the old way of living. Purpose isn't waiting for you to become better, it's waiting for you to become honest. And that begins today, not tomorrow. It begins the moment you choose to look inside with courage, without masks, without excuses, without running from your own depth. The question now is, what will you do with all this? Will you continue ignoring what you feel, or will you finally watch yourself with courage? Will you keep repeating the same patterns, or allow your shadow to teach you what it has been trying to show you all along? Will you continue asking for permission to be yourself, or will you embrace, once and for all, the authenticity your soul is begging to live? Think about it. What part of you is asking for light right now? What fear reveals your next task? What pain is hiding a strength you haven't explored yet? Your life changes when you change the way you look at yourself, and everything you saw here today will only have real value when you allow yourself to act. Even slowly, even uncomfortably, even if no one notices. Because the person who needs to notice is you. If any part of this touched you, sparked insight, or opened inner windows, then you already know you're on the right path. Now it's your turn. What will you transform first? Share it in the comments. I want to walk this journey with you. And before you go, do something simple but powerful. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Here, you will always find deep, human, and transformative content about Jung, shadow, purpose, authenticity, and self-knowledge. Don't let autopilot steal this journey from you.